Hey there, wonderful friend. I'd love to know, which city and country are you tuning in from? Maybe you're in a charming village or a massive urban center. Drop a comment below, and please share this video with your friends and family. It helps me a lot. Let's dive in. She said it like it was a joke, something light, tossed off without a second thought. Can you believe he still thinks they're his after all this time? Her voice crackled through the car's Bluetooth speakers, sharp, smug, and unmistakably clear. Sienna was talking to her best friend, laughing at me. At the children I had devoted my life to raising, at the family I believed we had nurtured together. My grip on the steering wheel tightened until my knuckles turned pale. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just sat there frozen as her words pulled the foundation out from under everything I knew. The truth I clung to began to fall apart. I was on my way to pick up flowers for her birthday, but instead of stopping, I kept driving, past the florist, the bakery, the cafe we once loved so much. My hands trembled. My thoughts were a void. I had no direction, only the certainty that something inside me had broken in a way that couldn't be fixed. In that single moment, I lost more than my wife. I lost the identity I'd built, the title of father I had worn with pride. I lost my purpose, and somehow that was only the beginning. But before we delve deeper into this story, take a moment to share where you're reading from. It's always powerful to see how far these moments reach. Your insights and reflections help keep this space alive, and we're grateful to have you here. If you haven't yet, make sure you're subscribed and that your notifications are on, so you never miss a story that matters. Now, settle in, maybe with something warm to drink. What you're about to hear is the kind of story that lingers long after the final word. It started like any other Tuesday. I was out picking up a few things for Sienna's birthday. She'd been dropping hints all week about the white orchids she loved, so I had them waiting at her favorite flower shop over on Brickell. Right next to it was the bakery that carried her favorite lemon raspberry tarts, the ones specially flown in from France. 14 years of knowing what she loved. 14 years of trying to stay one step ahead of her desires. I had just turned the key in the ignition when the car connected to her phone via Bluetooth. I paused. She must not have ended her last call. Her phone was still paired with the car's system. Then I heard another voice, Maya, her closest friend. I recognized the laugh before I even registered the words. But then Sienna said something that knocked the air out of me. He still believes the kids are his, she said, still laughing. 14 years and he's completely in the dark? Elias and I laugh about it all the time. He's just the perfect idiot. Then came more laughter, harsher now, icier. That laugh, I knew it too well. It was like hearing glass crack and scatter across a cold tile floor. I sat there, immobile, hands glued to the steering wheel, as everything around me blurred. I couldn't tell if it was the heat fogging the windshield or the shock tunneling through my system. Our children, Carter and Tara, not mine, and Elias. That name hit like a punch, the colleague she always mentioned, the so-called creative director. The same man who shook my hand at our son's school play. The same guy who handed me a drink at the 4th of July cookout. I had smiled at the man who was sleeping with my wife, who, it now appeared, had fathered the children I'd raised and loved as my own. I wanted to scream, to hit something, but I didn't. I drove, without a destination, just away. I passed the flower shop, the bakery, the cafe where we once escaped for quiet moments before her influencer world took over. I drove until I reached the edge of Coconut Grove. I pulled into some empty lot and let my head fall against the steering wheel. I thought about the diapers I'd changed, the soccer games I cheered at, the ER visits, the nights I stayed up rocking Carter through fevers, while Sienna filmed beauty tutorials in the next room. Every time Tara called me daddy and curled her little fingers around mine. How could she do this? No. How long had she known I didn't know? That's what shattered me. It wasn't only the betrayal, Not even the truth about the kids. It was knowing I had been a walking punchline for over a decade, a fool in the story of my own life. I don't remember how long I sat there, but eventually the sky darkened, burnt orange streaking across the horizon. The sunlight brushed against my face, but it felt like it was meant for someone else. At 5:30, she sent a text. "Don't forget Tara's ballet bag, and pick up a nice bottle of wine, something French maybe." I stared at the screen. No apology, no hesitation, just another normal request, as if nothing in our world had just collapsed. I wanted to reply, to say something final, cutting, but I didn't. I deleted the message, then turned the car around and drove home, feeling like I was heading straight into my own funeral. When I walked through the front door, she was there, curled on the couch in a robe, her hair wrapped in silk, sipping tea and watching a documentary. She looked up, completely unbothered. "Hey, babe," she said. "Are you okay? You look worn out." Her gentle question pulled my attention, and I silently scrutinized her face without replying. She tilted her head slightly, eyes narrowing with mild curiosity. "You forgot the wine." Still, I remained quiet. Revealing even a hint of what I'd discovered would unravel everything in an instant. My chance to expose her completely, protect the children, and reclaim all that rightfully belonged to me would vanish if I moved prematurely. Forcing a thin smile, I finally responded, "I'll go out again later." She nodded distractedly, her focus already returning to the glow of the screen. In that brief moment, everything crystallized for me. She mistook my silence as weakness, entirely unaware how deeply mistaken she was. My quiet demeanor was about to become my most formidable weapon. From that instant, I ceased to be her husband, and instead became her shadow, always there, always watching, always patient. The real struggle wasn't accepting what I'd uncovered. It was convincingly pretending I knew nothing at all. The next morning, I woke to the distant melody of Sienna humming from the bathroom. Her face showed no trace of guilt or anxiety. If anything, she seemed lighter, almost carefree, as if secretly betraying me with Maya had relieved her of some invisible weight. Every casual movement now felt laced with betrayal, each indifferent glance carefully calculated. Like always, I prepared breakfast for the children. Tara asked for eggs with runny yolks, and Carter ignored my cooking entirely, pouring himself cereal instead. That day, I didn't drive them to school. When Sienna volunteered, I eagerly agreed, needing the time for something far more urgent. Soon after, I found myself parked discreetly behind a nondescript building in Coral Gables, the office of a private investigation firm run by Harrison, my old college friend. Once in law enforcement, he now specialized in sensitive cases involving corporate espionage and marital betrayal. We hadn't spoken in years. When I entered his office, Harrison's brow arched slightly. "Conrad Mills. You look rough." "I need your help," I stated bluntly. Within half an hour, he had personally agreed to take my case. "I'll need complete access," he explained firmly. "Her phone records, financial history, daily schedule. I'll arrange surveillance, digital forensics, perhaps even follow this Elias fellow." I nodded firmly. "Do whatever it takes. I need the full truth." By midday, all necessary paperwork had been completed, and I'd arranged to discreetly pay Harrison through my private holding company to avoid raising Sienna's suspicion. When I returned home, slipping effortlessly back into the role I'd perfected, I gently kissed Sienna's temple as she walked through the door, casually filming herself for Instagram in our bathroom mirror. She was utterly absorbed in her performance, blissfully unaware that the man she believed was still playing along had long ceased to participate. Over the following 2 weeks, Harrison slowly delivered a devastating portrait of reality, piece by piece. First came surveillance photographs, undeniable proof that Elias was far more than a casual fling. They were frequently captured together, sharing intimate dinners at the Setai, weekend getaways in West Palm Beach, secret evenings spent in a luxury penthouse she falsely attributed to influencer campaigns. One particularly painful photo showed Elias tenderly brushing her hair back by candlelight, the necklace I'd given her on our 10th anniversary gleaming around her neck. Next arrived the phone records, thousands of messages brimming with mockery and contempt aimed directly at me. There were screenshots of my emails, voice notes in which she cruelly mimicked my voice, and worst of all, images of our children with nicknames like Elias Jr. and Mini-Me. Yet nothing pierced deeper than a specific audio clip. "She thinks he's her dad," Sienna murmured, amusement evident in her voice. "But those eyes are undeniably Elias's, aren't they? He hasn't noticed?" A perfect fool. My jaw clenched painfully. Sitting alone in my dimly lit office, hands trembling, I absorbed her dismissive ridicule of 14 years of my existence, as though mocking an uninteresting rerun. Despite the rage burning within me, I maintained composure, refusing to confront her openly. My next action reshaped everything profoundly. I arranged for DNA testing, discreetly coordinated by Harrison. He carefully retrieved samples from Tara's hairbrush and Carter's toothbrush, ensuring absolute anonymity and no traceable connection to me. The results arrived swiftly and were brutally conclusive. Neither child was biologically mine, not even remotely close. My chest tightened unbearably, blood draining from my body so rapidly I nearly fell. Though I'd anticipated this moment, no amount of preparation could shield me from the sheer devastation of such absolute betrayal. Those children had been my entire world. Every decision over the last 14 years had revolved around my role as their father. Now, with agonizing clarity, I realized I'd merely been the man who funded their lives, constructed their treehouse, comforted their wounds, and kissed their foreheads gently each night. No blood tied us together, not even the faintest genetic thread. Yet despite it all, I refused to walk away, because leaving would hand Sienna exactly the victory she sought. I knew her well enough to read the signs. The meticulously planned birthday soiree, the curated Instagram stories with just the right lighting. Sienna was constructing a storyline, one where I was the antagonist. The husband, too, consumed by work to notice her, emotionally distant, perhaps not physically unfaithful, but checked out all the same. The type of man who made his wife feel like a ghost in her own home. She was staging her exit carefully, one that cast her as the courageous woman walking away with dignity. With Elias, of course, no drama, no dirt, just a polished transition into a new, shinier life. I wasn't going to let her write the ending, so I dug into the numbers. Not the obvious ones she thought I'd casually skim, but the ones buried beneath layers of financial fog, dummy corporations, parent entities, the scaffolding we had created back when expansion was our shared dream. When she said she wanted to empower women through a global wellness brand driven by her online presence. What she built instead was a channel for quiet theft. For almost a year, she'd been draining money from our primary venture into projects tied to Elias, a media company, a skincare label with no product, a consulting firm that existed only on paper. I called Imani Brooks, my attorney, a no-nonsense divorce expert recently relocated from New York to Miami. She didn't mince words. "Conrad," she said bluntly, "you've got two options. Light the match now, or bide your time, stack leverage, and let her believe she's winning." I looked her straight in the eye. "We wait," I said. "But when we strike, she won't see it coming." Imani nodded slowly, the corners of her mouth twitching into a knowing smile. "Then let's play chess." That same week, I began taking back control. I met privately with our CFO, shifted ownership of digital properties, secured intellectual assets under my name, and rerouted the kids' trusts into legally protected accounts. My actions weren't impulsive, they were surgical. I moved with the clarity of someone who had finally shed the lie he'd been living. At home, I didn't miss a beat. Tara still asked for bedtime stories. I read them without hesitation. Carter wanted to play basketball that weekend. I laced up my sneakers and said yes. Every time I looked at them, I was reminded of a version of myself I no longer admired, the man who wore blinders for the sake of love. But those children were mine. I had earned the title of father, through exhaustion, through scraped knees and middle-of-the-night fevers, through unconditional presence. No PR stunt could erase that. One evening, Sienna walked into my office holding a folder, acting as if nothing had shifted. "I wanted to run through the Q3 content update," she said with that smooth, calculated tone of hers. "Our TikTok numbers are plateauing. I think it's time for a fresh angle." I turned to her slowly. "Do you remember when we stopped being a couple?" I asked, "and started functioning like business partners?" She blinked, surprised. "What are you talking about?" "I mean," I said calmly, "when was the last time you touched me without a camera in the room? When was the last kiss that wasn't staged for likes?" A shadow of discomfort crossed her face. "If this is about work stress, it's not," I said. "It's about trust." She laughed, a cold, dismissive sound. "Please, you checked out a long time ago." I held her gaze. "I know, Sienna." Her expression tightened. "Know what?" I tilted my head slightly. "Everything." She stayed still, but her eyes moved, scanning, calculating. That flicker, brief but unmistakable, gave her away. Panic. Realization. She masked it quickly, but I saw it. "I don't know what you're implying," she said, her voice lower now. "Good," I said. "Let's keep it that way." She turned and walked out, the silk of her robe trailing behind her like a banner of deceit. Once she was gone, I sent Imani a simple text. "Proceed. Quietly. Finish it before her birthday." Her reply came 30 seconds later, already underway. I didn't respond. Silence no longer meant surrender. It meant control. Sienna's facade didn't crumble in one dramatic moment. It fractured in subtleties, slight hesitations in her speech, a flicker of uncertainty when I stared too long, split-second delays in her reactions. She could sense the air shifting, tightening around her, and the more I leaned into the role of the loving husband, the more she lost her footing. We threw a lavish fundraiser at the Vizcaya Museum, a public relations gala for her Sisters of Serenity initiative, her latest polished pitch of female empowerment cloaked in luxe wellness jargon. The press turned up in droves. So did the city's elite, donors, influencers, and a handful of reality TV scouts circling like sharks in Louboutins. Sienna arrived in a backless ivory gown that all but screamed free agent. I wore the tux she chose, fitted perfectly, selling the image of a devoted partner still trying to hold on. She clung to me when the flashes burst, all perfect posture and staged affection. But once the attention faded, she slipped out of my hold like I was just another prop in her production. I watched her glide through the crowd, murmuring to guests, laughing just a bit too loud at empty jokes. But Elias wasn't there. That set off alarms in my mind. I scanned the room until I found Harrison, embedded in the security team, quietly keeping watch. He leaned in close, speaking low and steady. "She's playing it safe tonight," he told me. "But Elias, he's close." About an hour later, I saw him, parked near the valet circle in a dimly lit Tesla. He never got out, never came inside. Still, I knew Sienna could feel his presence. Every time she passed a window facing the front of the property, something subtle in her shifted. You wouldn't notice unless you were looking for it, but it was there. When I got back home, I looked through the gala photos she had posted. In every shot where I had been touching her, my hand was gone, cropped out, deliberately. The narrative changed. She reframed the story. Her captions spoke of transformation, of rising from ashes, a phoenix reborn. She tagged me, technically, but never used my name. Just another shadow in her reinvention. That night, I didn't sleep. Instead, I reviewed the trust documents for the kids. They were still solid, legally protected, immutable, but a single clause stuck out. Legitimate heirs. I had insisted on it when we drafted the agreements. It felt smart then. Now it felt like a warning I should have heeded. The next morning, Imani called. "Are you in a place where you can talk?" I was at the gym, slamming a medicine ball into the floor like it had wronged me. "Go on," I said. "We tracked the third wire transfer," she told me. "It went to Elias's cousin, through a shell company, same bank you use for corporate operations." My heart thudded. "What's the connection?" "That marketing allocation you greenlit last quarter, some of it funded a condo, under Elias's name." My breath stalled. "She forged my signature?" "No," she said. "Used a digital identity clone, but someone erased the audit logs." "Someone helped her?" "Guy from your compliance division." I went cold. "Name's coming," she said. "But listen closely. This is no longer about cheating. This is financial misconduct. If it surfaces before we control the narrative, you're collateral. One misstep, and it's all gone." I sat motionless, sweat drying on my back. Then we don't misstep. In the days that followed, I started locking things down, transferred key contracts out of joint holdings, suspended all discretionary budgets she could manipulate. Harrison set up deep system forensics on our home network. Every login, message, access attempt, captured, time-stamped, and encrypted. Sienna kept up appearances. She still offered me sips of her smoothies, still sighed about how exhausting it was to manage everything alone, still gave me those performative kisses in front of the kids, like a martyr on autopilot. But her eyes betrayed her. They darted faster. Her questions multiplied. She looked at me like I was bleeding from a wound she'd spent years denying existed. And then, everything shifted. It was a Tuesday. I was at the kitchen table reviewing a proposal. She entered quietly, robe tied, coffee steaming, and just stood there, staring too long. "I had a weird dream," she said. "You weren't yourself." "What do you mean?" "Cold, distant, like you were hiding things." I looked up, careful to keep my face composed. "Maybe that's just your guilt talking." Her mouth dropped, then pressed into a thin line. A short, sharp laugh escaped her. "What did you just say?" I folded the paper in front of me. "Just thinking out loud." Her eyes narrowed. "Are you accusing me of something?" "No," I said evenly. "I'm just wondering when you stopped being the person I married." That struck harder than I expected. She backed away, glancing over her shoulder as she left the room. By that evening she had booked a solo retreat to Sedona, said she needed space to recharge before her next launch. I let her leave. I even packed her suitcase. While she was gone, Imani and I filed every motion we'd prepared. Emergency injunction to freeze joint liquid assets, request for full custody, formal petition alleging breach of fiduciary duty. Clean, precise, ruthless. By the time Sienna returned, wrapped in overpriced yoga wear and radiating artificial calm, it was already over. Her bank accounts, locked. The kids, with me, under court order. Her lawyer, already trying to reach me. She didn't explode right away. She started with the performance. "This is some mistake, Conrad. You can't do this. We're still married." I stood in the entryway, court papers in hand. "Not for much longer." She read through them, once, then again, then she screamed, "You vindictive bastard! You've ruined everything." "No," I said, my voice level. "I just stopped pretending." She lunged at me abruptly, but I swiftly moved aside. There wasn't anger within me, nor any sense of triumph, only a profound realization that this moment was irreversible. For nearly a minute she paced in tense agitation, muttering under her breath until she finally snapped, "The kids will hate you for this." I met her gaze with calm certainty. "You've already ensured that outcome." Her eyes glared fiercely, like a wounded animal trapped and desperate, yet beneath her rage I sensed genuine fear, a deep, unmistakable dread. It wasn't merely concern over losing the children or her financial stability. It was the shock of losing control of a story she had long dominated. Later that night, Tara and I sat quietly beneath the stars. She didn't bombard me with questions. Instead, she gently leaned into my shoulder, silently contemplating the night sky. After a long silence, she whispered softly, "Are you and Mom fighting?" I hesitated briefly before nodding slowly. "Yes, sweetheart." "Is it about the man she's always texting? The one with nice hair?" My heart dropped instantly. "You noticed that?" Her serious nod made my stomach twist. "I heard her talking on the phone once. She said you'd never find out. I didn't say anything because I thought I'd get in trouble." I turned toward her, my voice gentle yet firm. "You've done absolutely nothing wrong, darling." "Nothing?" she repeated quietly, gazing up at me with eyes distinctly different from mine, yet comfortingly familiar. "I'm glad you know," she murmured. At that instant, I realized all was not lost. Biology might connect them to someone else, but our bond was defined by love. By the time Sienna's lawyer tried to contact me directly, I had already secured a new number. It wasn't driven by spite, it was strategy. Every move I made was calculated, deliberately engineered to shield my children and distance Sienna's influence without causing a public scandal that could further harm them. I was no longer simply a husband betrayed. I was a father, a leader, fully in command of my narrative. Meanwhile, Sienna descended into panic mode. She posted a cryptic update on her Sisters of Serenity Instagram account. Sometimes we become so trapped in our roles, we forget how to breathe. I'm reclaiming my truth, whatever the cost. Her followers, mainly wellness-focused suburban women and self-appointed empowerment coaches, flooded her comments with blind support. "You're incredibly brave. Speak your truth. We've all experienced this. Stay strong." None of them understood the stark truth behind her eloquent facade. Beneath her poetic veneer, Sienna was coming undone. The custody hearing was scheduled 3 weeks later, but in the meantime, the judge unexpectedly granted me temporary custody, a measure I hadn't requested but which Imani had strongly recommended. After reviewing initial reports of unauthorized financial dealings, the court had acted decisively. Sienna's public persona shifted instantly from celebrated to obscured. She relocated to an upscale yet impersonal apartment downtown. I only learned about it when Tara casually mentioned a neon pink sign in her mother's bedroom that read, "Manifest, babe." It was almost laughable. Precisely the type of trendy yet hollow place chosen by people desperate to prove to themselves they weren't truly alone. Currently, Sienna had supervised visitation rights, 4 hours each, twice a week. The facade quickly began to crumble. On her third visit, she arrived late, visibly unsettled. Not exactly disheveled, as Sienna would never permit that, yet unmistakably shaken. Her lipstick wasn't fully applied, her eyelashes uneven, and she wore a perfume she'd previously mocked as cheap and overly sweet. I noticed because Sienna had always been meticulous, obsessed with appearance. Now, attempting to mask her instability, she embraced exaggerated affection, hugging the kids excessively, laughing too loudly, and posing stiff, scripted questions as if desperately preparing for an exam about their lives. "Your father is doing such a wonderful job," she forced out, offering Tara an empty smile. "He's really stepping up, isn't he?" Tara shrugged slightly in response. "I miss you both so much." Sienna's voice quivered faintly. "But sometimes adults need space to grow. Do you understand that?" Carter nodded politely, but Tara turned away. Dinner that evening was unusually silent. I didn't press the children for explanations. Their quietness communicated more than words ever could. Early the next morning, Harrison urgently contacted me. "You need to see something," he insisted. forwarding grainy surveillance footage from Sienna's apartment garage, an intense argument between Sienna and Elias. He roughly grabbed her wrist. She shoved him away forcefully. Elias spat angrily onto the ground and stormed off. Harrison's voice cut in. This footage is from 2 nights ago, about 36 hours before her latest visit. I scrutinized the screen closely. She's unraveling, I whispered. No, Harrison firmly corrected. She's being exposed. The moment had arrived. With quiet resolve, I assembled my board of directors, presenting them comprehensive evidence. My approach held no emotional pleas or theatrical flair, only undeniable facts and clear documentation. I presented an extensive timeline, backed by solid documentation, revealing how Sienna had funneled funds through fictitious marketing channels tied to a condo owned by Elias's cousin. The air in the room turned dense with tension. Brief glances, murmured exchanges, then silence. Finally, Miriam, one of the board's most senior figures, leaned forward. "Are you looking to make this public?" she asked. I shook my head. "Not yet. I just want the reins back." She gave a firm nod. "You'll have control before the quarter wraps." Simultaneously, Imani submitted an amended petition in family court, attaching fresh proof of Sienna's financial misconduct. Her case centered on how such actions undermined Sienna's ability to serve as the children's primary guardian. This wasn't about vengeance. It was about shielding the kids from chaos, dishonesty, and emotional manipulation. Sienna's attorneys responded with force, pushing to have the evidence barred due to privacy concerns. But the judge didn't bite. The digital forensic reports were admitted, an unexpected legal breakthrough. When the decision landed, Imani allowed herself a rare moment of satisfaction. "This is the shift," she said. "This is when she starts losing the things she never thought she'd have to fight for." And she was right. At the next visitation, Sienna appeared unusually withdrawn, barefaced, wearing sunglasses indoors. When Carter asked what was wrong, she shot back, "Why would you ask that?" Only to follow it instantly with an overly sweet apology. Later, Tara told me quietly, "Mom's different. She keeps forgetting things I just said. Sometimes she just stares off." I didn't respond. I simply kept recording everything. Sienna wasn't built to endure failure. Her entire persona had been engineered for performance. Every smile, every word, every relationship, meticulously managed. Even our marriage had been a strategic alliance in her personal brand campaign. So when that facade began to shatter, she had no fallback. That Sunday, after midnight, she tried calling. I didn't pick up. Then the texts started. "We can fix this. You don't have to do it this way." Then another, "You're damaging the kids." And finally, "I'll go public. Don't test me." I powered off the phone. By the next morning, a prominent Miami social column led with a headline, "Wellness Icon Under Investigation. Financial Questions Surround Serenity's Founder." My name wasn't in the piece, but it didn't have to be. Anyone who'd followed the breadcrumbs knew exactly what it meant. That was the tipping point. By the end of the week, Sienna's flagship brand had lost 2 major sponsors. A silent partner pulled out, and the final blow came when her own staff filed an internal grievance, alleging a toxic environment and inappropriate blending of business and personal lines. Elias disappeared, cut off all contact. His cousin's property was sold. His gym shut down, citing internal restructuring. Whatever plans they had vanished into the same void she once used to keep me silent. Her lawyer sent a mediation request. I declined. Instead, I greenlit a carefully crafted press release from my team, measured and impersonal. No malice, just precision. Reed Holdings has assumed full executive leadership of Serenity Ventures. Our focus remains on ethical stewardship and transparency. That same afternoon, the court granted me full temporary custody. Sienna was assigned weekly supervised visitation, contingent on a psychological evaluation. When the judge read the decision, she didn't argue, she didn't cry. She simply sat still, eyes fixed on the table, blinking slowly, as if awakening from a version of her life that no longer existed. Outside, the sun felt unnaturally sharp, as though the day itself had edges. I stood with Tara and Carter beside me. Neither asked for an explanation. They could feel it. Something permanent had shifted. And as Sienna was quietly ushered out a rear exit to avoid the cameras, something unexpected surfaced in me. I didn't feel hatred. I wasn't even after retribution anymore. Because what Sienna had lost wasn't something I could take. It was the image she'd worshipped, the identity she had built everything around. And once something like that is gone, there's no storybook redemption left. April 11th. Once our anniversary. We used to call it Empire Day. 14 years ago, we vowed to build something vast. Ambition, legacy, dominance. At least, that's what I believed. Now, it had become a countdown. A marker toward the end of a life I once thought was real. No champagne this year. No rooftop backdrops staged for picture-perfect moments. Just one final play left. A closing move, absolute and irreversible. The gala was set for 7 p.m. in the grand ballroom of the Eden Tower, a sprawling glass and marble space on the 40th floor, basking in soft gold and silver, designed to impress. It was originally announced as a joint philanthropic event between Serenity Ventures and Reed Holdings. That was before Sienna's collapse. Now, the branding was being quietly rewritten. I left her name on the program, not by accident, but as an act of grace. She had RSVP'd, and Imani had double-checked with Sienna's assistant. Evidently, she saw the gala as her stage for a public rebirth. She planned to deliver a speech, one last flourish in her lifelong performance. I decided she could have her moment in the spotlight, for the early part of the evening at least. The kids were with my sister for the night. I didn't want them anywhere near what was coming. They didn't need to see what Justice looked like when dressed in designer suits and polished leather. I arrived before most, clad in a tux the shade of midnight, composed and quiet, like someone bracing to narrate his own eulogy. Inside, Harrison and Imani were already in position. Every detail had been set with precision, no room for error. "We ready?" I asked. Harrison gave a tight nod. "Screens are prepped." Imani handed me a slim black flash drive. "Embargo lifts right at 8. These are the finals. It's your call when to run them." The venue filled quickly. Corporate titans, high-profile donors, trustees, the city's polished elite. Champagne caught the light in towering crystal flutes. Laughter ricocheted off marble walls. It was an evening curated for appearances. Then she arrived. Sienna. Wrapped in ivory silk, her gown plunged delicately at the neckline, her heels sparkling with diamonds. Her hair was styled in artful waves, her gaze scanning the room like a camera lens taking inventory. She greeted old acquaintances she'd long ignored, offering air kisses to women she once dismissed as irrelevant. She was fully engaged in the performance. She hadn't noticed me yet. I lingered near the center, chatting with Miriam and a few investors. When our eyes finally met across the room, she paused, for just a breath, before approaching with fluid elegance. "Conrad," she said, voice soft, rehearsed. "You look sharp," she added. "So do you," I replied, offering a cordial smile, distant but polite. "Planning to say a few words tonight?" She tilted her head. "Just something brief. I think people need some lightness." "Then I'm sure they'll glow for you," I said, turning back toward the group. She hesitated a moment too long, then drifted away. I checked my watch. At 7:45, the lights dimmed. The host delivered a glowing introduction. Sienna walked on stage, the picture of sophistication. She spoke of resilience, of beginning again, of finding hope in the aftermath of failure. She thanked her supporters, acknowledged her journey. A single tear gathered in the corner of her eye, flawlessly timed. The applause was warm, some even rose to their feet. Then I stepped forward. "Ladies and gentlemen," I began, my tone calm and clear. Before we proceed, I ask for 5 minutes. Just 5, for the sake of truth. The room shifted. The lights behind me illuminated the screen. Images appeared. Transaction logs, wire transfer details, timestamps, offshore records. Next, messages. Between Sienna and Elias. First flirtatious, then methodical. A blueprint for siphoning funds under the radar. And then, audio. Her voice. "He really thinks it's all his. 14 years and he still has no idea," she laughed. "Elias and I always say, he's the perfect idiot." Silence pressed against the walls. No movement, no whisper. Sienna remained rooted to the spot, face unchanging, but a solitary blink fractured her poise. I didn't look her way. I didn't need to. "This isn't scandal. This is about integrity," I said, voice firm. "About what leadership requires. About the promises we make, to partners, to colleagues, to those we say we love. This isn't collapse. This is consequence." I stepped down. The applause began slowly. First a board member, then another. Not celebratory, just certain, final. By the time I exited through the service door, Sienna was gone. I later heard she left through the kitchen, bumping a tray of hors d'oeuvres on her way out. Her assistant quit the following morning. 2 top sponsors pulled out within 48 hours. The press release went live at precisely 8:00 p.m. Everything, videos, transcripts, financials, was published not through some gossip site, but on Reed Holdings' official page. I didn't smear her, I didn't editorialize, I let the facts speak, and when truth is left untouched, it doesn't whisper, it burns. That night, I sat alone on the balcony. No drink, no tears, just the quiet hum of the city beneath me. 14 years. 14 years spent crafting a life I once believed was untouchable. Years of faith, compromise, and in the end, collapse. And now, finally, I was free. Not whole. Not yet. That would come with time. But I wasn't confined anymore. The next morning, my phone lit up with a flood of notifications. Messages poured in from unfamiliar names, thanking me for my openness. A few were from faces I hadn't seen in years, old friends who had quietly faded into the past. Even a former professor reached out. "I always knew you'd build something no one could ever take from you." But the message that undid me came from Tara. She and my sister had watched the live stream together. Her words hit like nothing else. "Dad, I'm proud of you. I didn't know everything, but I do know this. You never stopped showing up for us, even when it cost you. I get that now." I sat frozen on the edge of my bed, phone gripped tight, feeling something shift deep in my chest. It wasn't pain, it was the release. That one message held everything. Because that, right there, that was the peace Sienna could never forge, never pretend, never steal. That was love, the earned kind, rooted and real. For the first time in what felt like a lifetime, I took a breath without shielding myself. 2 days after the gala, Miami still hadn't quieted down. Clips from the night were everywhere, clipped, re-edited, turned into jokes, dissected on podcasts and in long-winded op-eds. Commentators broke down every moment, questioning whether my actions were courageous or cruel. As usual, the internet offered no middle ground. Some branded me a truth-teller. Others accused me of dragging private matters into the spotlight. But none of that fazed me. I had already accepted the price long before the fallout arrived. What mattered was, the truth had surfaced, and every carefully spun illusion Sienna built had gone up in smoke. Elias vanished, unsurprisingly. He had been in the running for a prominent advisory role with a national board. That door slammed shut the moment our financial records were made public. Sienna's lawyers fell silent. This wasn't just scandal. It had escalated into criminal territory, embezzlement, fraud, a blatant breach of fiduciary duty. Imani and Harrison had seen it coming. Within 48 hours, every account tied to her name was frozen pending a formal inquiry. Serenity Ventures issued a public statement denouncing her conduct as a betrayal of the principles we were founded on. My attorney forwarded me the final version of the divorce settlement. I didn't chase every asset. I wasn't out for revenge or drama. What I wanted was definition. No ambiguity, no half-truths, just closure. Custody, though, that was where I felt most exposed. On paper, I could have pushed for full rights to Tara and Carter, but biology had never been what defined us. I had been their constant, their parent in the ways that mattered. So I requested a conversation. No legal teams, no intermediaries, just us. We met in a nondescript conference room at a law office in Brickell. No windows, just 4 gray walls, a bland table, 2 chairs, and a glass pitcher no one touched. She walked in late, wearing oversized sunglasses indoors, like she still had an image to project. But her voice gave her away. It wavered. "I didn't think you'd want to see me," she said quietly. "I don't," I replied. "But our kids deserve more than silence." She gave a small nod, eyes lowered. "They don't know everything." "They know enough," I said. There was a pause. Then she said, "Conrad, I never meant for any of this to get so out of hand. And yet it stretched 14 years, I said. And here we are. I never stopped loving them," she whispered. "I believe you," I said, "but you stopped respecting me. And that's the one thing you can't undo." Her jaw tightened, and in that brief moment, I saw something unguarded in her. No pretense, no posturing, just a kind of exhaustion. "I can't fix this," she said. "I know." We let the silence settle, heavy and unspoken. Eventually she said, "I won't contest custody. Just, please don't turn them against me." "I won't have to," I said. "That already began long before today." She winced, then gave a slow nod. 2 days later, the paperwork was finalized. Joint custody, with me as the primary residence. She'd have the kids every other weekend and once midweek, if they were up for it. No alimony. We split the rest without drama. The penthouse sold. She relocated to a smaller beachside condo. I stayed in the family home with the kids. Tara struggled the most. Since the night of the gala, she hadn't spoken a word to her mother. At 15, she was learning to see through masks. Her sadness came out in late-night confessions, obsessive schoolwork, and the way she avoided eye contact with just about everyone. Carter, only 10, didn't fully grasp it, but he was resilient. One evening, he looked up at me and asked, "Are we still a family?" "Yes," I said to him. "We always will be, just in a different way." That day, I silently vowed to never speak ill of Sienna in front of the kids. Not because I'd let go of the anger, but because they deserved a home without tension, a space untouched by bitterness. The weeks that followed were unusually still, so quiet, it felt unfamiliar, almost eerie. For the first time in what felt like ages, I could finally breathe without bracing for impact. No more slammed doors cutting through arguments, no more pressure dressed up as motivation, just silence. And in that silence, something unexpected stirred. I began to rediscover the version of myself that existed before I became a shadow of her. I picked up my old habit of running at dawn, 5 solitary miles along the ocean, accompanied only by the sound of waves. I dug out my dusty camera, a hobby abandoned in my 20s. I reached out to Malcolm, an old friend from business school who'd recently returned to town. He invited me to join the advisory board of his new venture. I accepted, not for prestige, but to remember what it felt like to matter beyond being a dad or a husband. Evenings with the kids found their own rhythm. Tara and I created a tradition. Friday nights spent with takeout and documentaries. Sometimes it was nature series, other times crime stories or opinion pieces that led to heated, thoughtful debates we'd pause constantly to have. Carter took up an interest in cooking, and soon our weekends included pancake competitions. His wild mix, blueberries, banana, and cinnamon, won twice without question. One night, after they'd both gone to bed, I sat out on the patio with an old laptop. I stared at the blank page of a journal I hadn't touched in years. Then I began to type. Not about Sienna, not about revenge. I wrote about hurt, about what it meant to lose yourself, and the long road to finding your way back. Word by word, I began stitching together the parts of me I had once so easily surrendered. Then, one evening, I received something unexpected. A letter in an envelope, addressed in Tara's handwriting. Inside was a single line written on a folded piece of paper. You never let us fall, even when you were the one pushed. I sat still for a long time, the letter trembling slightly between my fingers. In that quiet moment, something clicked. I realized that I wasn't defined by Sienna's betrayal. I was defined by my children, by the way I chose to rebuild, by the decision to stay soft in a world that urged me to harden. Time kept moving. Weeks rolled into months. Sienna reinvented herself, this time as a life coach. Her Instagram filled with pastel-toned quotes about self-love and transformation. When I didn't engage, she blocked me. I wasn't hurt. Reinventing yourself for the world is far easier than facing your own truth in silence. From what I gathered, Elias eventually went back to Atlanta. Quietly. I never saw him again. And truthfully, I didn't need to. I hadn't won by retaliating. I'd won by reclaiming my own peace. Eventually, Sienna reached out. She wanted to meet, not for legal matters, but something more personal. We sat down at a small cafe in Coconut Grove. She wore no makeup, no pretense. I'm sorry, she said. Her voice was low, but steady. Are you sorry for what you did? I asked. Or just sorry you were caught? She met my eyes. I'm sorry I broke someone who only ever tried to lift me higher. I stayed silent. She slid an envelope across the table. I got a consulting gig, she said. It's not much, but I want to contribute to their schooling. I didn't object. I didn't thank her. Just a quiet nod. As she got up to leave, she hesitated. Do you hate me? She asked. I looked at her for a long time before answering. Honestly, no. I don't hate you. I just don't know who you are anymore. And maybe, neither do you. She nodded, tears slipping down her cheeks. Then she walked away. That was the last time I saw her in person. Maybe someday, at a school performance or a graduation, we'll exchange a polite nod across a crowded room. Or maybe we won't. Either way, it won't be about us. It'll be about them. About Tara and Carter. Because real revenge isn't destruction. It's survival. It's healing. It's joy. And I had found mine again. It's been 15 months since the night everything unraveled and exposed what lay beneath. 15 months since the gala. Since the video emerged. Since the silence that followed. In that time, I've learned a powerful truth. Healing isn't dramatic. It doesn't arrive with fireworks or applause. It slips in, quietly, like the morning sun through uneven blinds. Gentle, constant, and real. Some mornings feel like pressing repeat. Nothing shifts. Everything stays still. Then there are days when change crashes in like a wave you didn't see coming. Lately, I wake to the familiar hum of the coffee grinder downstairs. Carter's already at it, proudly embracing his self-appointed title of house barista. He always leaves a note on the mug. Conrad, double espresso with a splash of redemption. The dramatic flair is never missing. Tara's in her final stretch of high school. Just last week, she got early admission to Columbia. No big celebration, no shouting. She simply turned her laptop around to show me the acceptance screen. I pulled her into a hug so tight she let out a playful gasp for air. Then the tears came. Not over school, but because of everything else. The dam finally broke. Thank you, she whispered. I couldn't get a word out. My voice was buried under the weight of everything we'd lived through. I think back to when I laid it all out for her, no filters. We were in the garage, flipping through old photo boxes. She pulled out one of us. She was 5, perched on my shoulders at the aquarium. Our cheeks pressed together, both of us smiling like the world couldn't touch us. I always felt safe up there, she murmured. Something inside me gave way. There's something I need to tell you, I said. She didn't interrupt once, just listened. Her eyes filled, but stayed fixed on mine. When I finished, she asked just one thing. You knew? Since when? Right before your mom's birthday party, I replied. She let that land. But you stayed. Always, I told her. Because being your dad was never about whose blood runs where. That moment reshaped everything between us. It gave us a new kind of honesty. Carter doesn't have the full story yet. He's younger, still growing into his questions. One day, I'll tell him everything. He deserves that. For now, I just keep showing up. Soccer games, parent-teacher nights, those long bedtime talks that spiral into life's big questions. And whatever the topic, my answer circles back to this. Life will knock you over. What you choose next, that's your strength. Sienna hasn't reached out in over 6 weeks. The last time she did, she was crying, saying she barely recognized the people her children had become. I let her talk. I didn't comfort her. That's not mine to do anymore. I told her plainly, you made your choice. Now you live with what that choice gave you. She didn't argue. She knew. We ended the call in silence. Lately, she's reinvented herself online. New name, new persona, marketing herself as a resilience coach and betrayal expert. I don't respond. That version of her isn't mine to rescue. As for Elias, he's disappeared. Word is, he might have fled the country. A few lawsuits are rumored to be in the mix. None from me. I won't keep bleeding energy into people who drained me for years. I turned that energy inward. The journal I began during the worst of it slowly became chapters, then a manuscript, then a book deal, inheritance without blood. It's not a revenge piece. It's about surviving the aftermath, and apparently it resonated. Letters poured in. Parents, spouses, siblings, people who had been deceived, discarded, or left in silence. They thanked me for giving voice to what they'd buried inside. A few weeks ago, I spoke at a Boston conference. After my talk, a woman in her 60s approached me, tears running down her cheeks. You gave words to 2 decades I couldn't explain, she said. I didn't know how to respond. I just held her hand. Sometimes that's all anyone needs. Words can fail. Silence doesn't. That's one thing I've come to believe. Silence isn't weakness. It's clarity. It's ownership. It's the strongest form of peace. When Sienna humiliated me at that gala, she mistook my silence for surrender. But it wasn't that. It was restraint. The fiercest form of strength isn't fury, it's endurance. I remember something Tara once asked. We were walking along the beach, her toes drawing patterns in the sand. She looked over and said, "Do you miss Mom?" "Sometimes," I said truthfully. "But do you still love her?" she asked, searching my face. I paused. I love who I thought she was, the person I believed I married. I grieve that version of her, but I don't love who she became. Tara nodded, slowly, like she understood more than her age should allow. She said, "I think the version of you now is the one I'll remember most." I asked her, "Which version is that?" She smiled, soft and sure. "The one who stayed." That's when it fully landed. Being a father was never about paperwork or biology. It was always about choosing them, every single day. And I did. Everything shifted when presence took center stage. I used to think the turning point in my life would be the betrayal, but it wasn't the climax, just the axis. What truly mattered began later, when I chose to rebuild. When I figured out how to release anger without abandoning my boundaries, how to let the pain fall away while holding tight to what mattered most. Tonight, I'm cooking dinner with Carter. Tara moves in the background, setting the atmosphere with an old-school soul playlist. She says it helps her stay connected to the woman she's growing into. I ask her what she means. "I'm becoming someone who doesn't settle anymore," she tells me. "Someone who finally sees with clarity." I nod. warmth rising in my chest. While I stir the pot, Carter drops a tomato on the floor, and something stirs in me, something sure and subtle. Peace isn't silent, not in the way we're taught to believe. It has texture, like laughter breaking through grief, or the sound of steps in a room once filled with silence. It's the echo of your voice returning, steady, strong, and undeniably yours. I won't pretend I'm unscarred. The evidence is still there. Some nights, the memories still resurface. Cold sweat, that call, that night, that recording. But they've lost their grip on me. They've become markers of distance, of how far I've come, of who I found beneath the wreckage, and what I managed to create again, without ever having to raise my voice. Betrayal doesn't always come with destruction. Sometimes it arrives gently, through unspoken truths, through the ache of silence louder than any words, through love that erodes trust over time. And yet, even in that quiet collapse, there's an unexpected doorway, a chance to return to yourself. Not with rage, not with revenge, but with presence, with strength that doesn't seek attention. Healing doesn't ask to be noticed. It only asks for you to be here consistently, even when no one else is, to craft a life so grounded, so resilient, that no betrayal could ever break it again. We are not defined by what hurt us, but by how we gather ourselves and move forward. In the end, peace isn't about escaping the storm. It's about standing in your truth. And sometimes, the greatest victory is simply living a life that no longer requires explanation. Our story has come to an end. What do you think about this story? Share your thoughts in the comments. And if you enjoyed the way I tell stories, head over to my channel and check out my other videos. May the force be with you. See you soon, my friend.